Call that Dairy Parish Council meeting to order. The date is June 28, 2017. The time is 6 p.m. Remind everybody to silence your cell phones, and we'll stand for the prayer and pledge. Mr. Gustafson.
Our Father,
Lord in heaven,
Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Mr. Montra.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Tommy Pollard.
here.
Michael Landry.
Here.
Tommy Landry.
Here.
Lloyd Brown.
Here.
Warren Gottlieb.
Here.
Natalie Broussard.
Here.
Paul Landry.
Here.
Ricky Gosselin.
Here.
Joe Dugas.
Here.
Eugene Olivier.
Here.
Brian Napier.
Here.
Robert Francis.
Here.
Marty Trahan.
Here.
Chad Montray.
Here.
We have a quorum. I need a motion to go into public comments.
Move.
One at a time, guys. Moved by Mr. Gosselin, second by Mr. Pollard. Roll call. That motion carries. We'll move to general comments on non-agenda items. First, we have Mr. Ryan Schaefer to address the council to provide an update on the parish beaver control.
Good evening.
Lou, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. How are y'all? Y'all excuse me, I'm a better beaver trapper than I am public speaker, so I'll promise you I'll keep this relatively short. But just wanted to come in. We're approximately 22 months into a project that we started as a pilot program in the parish to see if it would be feasible for me as a trapper and a business owner to take on a project of this scale, and whether or not it would be beneficial to the parish. The parish called me complaining of inundation with beaver, appurtenances of drainages being blocked up with beaver dams, culverts being blocked up. The parish had a few, what we in the business call hobby trappers or weekend trappers, hired on temporarily to try to eliminate some of the problems. They were not very successful in doing so. The problems began exacerbating themselves, and I was called in to basically give a site survey on some of the damage that was being caused, put together an assessment of what I thought might be the best way to get rid of the problem, or at least tackle the problem, and move forward from there. So what we developed, in an effort for me to see if it was worth doing and for the parish to be able to see if it was going to be economically feasible, we came up with a 6-month pilot program to basically test the waters, and we did so. That pilot program was initiated through Public Works and overseen by Mr. Broussard and his under Joey Lopez. I dealt and still continue to deal actively with Joey Lopez on a weekly basis, and we went forward from there. So how that worked is basically he contacted me. We did a site survey of each location in the parish that they were having current problems with, beaver dams that were active, culverts that were stopped up, and developed a plan to begin trapping those animals and see what kind of time frame it would take to trap each area. In 6 months, we don't keep numbers of actual catches because they give a false sense of what's actually happening. When you have such a large area, for me to come here and say we caught 300 beaver, that might sound like a lot of beaver to somebody that doesn't know that there's 30,000 of them out there, or whatever the numbers may be. So we try not to put exact numbers. Instead, we look at the ratio of catch to the ratio of reinfestation. So when we catch beaver out of an area, if we can eliminate that problem for 6 months, we consider that a huge success. So when I started this project, Public Works had been actively digging some of the same beaver dams every 2 weeks to 3 weeks, reoccurring. So that was a classic example of eliminating the symptom and not the problem. Public Works would send an excavator out, they'd excavate the beaver dam. 2 weeks later, you'd have the same dam, if not a bigger dam, in the same spot. So it was a waste of time, manpower, diesel, equipment. You can only imagine how quickly those numbers went very high. So anyway, we went in, started removing the beaver, and what I would do is, the parish is real good about keeping its right-of-ways clean. The guys that are on the tractors with the side-on bush hogs, when they come across a beaver dam or a drainage that's blocked, they radio that in to Public Works. Joey calls me, I go out there, do a site survey, make sure it is indeed a beaver dam and not just a log jam or something else, and we start trapping immediately. When I'm confident that we have the beavers removed from that area, Public Works then goes out and digs that beaver dam out and cleans that culvert out. Since we started the program, the ratio of numbers of times that they're having to go out there and dig these beaver dams has substantially been reduced. We're down to about 6 months in most places, sometimes a year. Some of the areas that we dug out, that we caught the beaver out of and had the beaver dams excavated almost 2 years ago have had no reinfestation. So those are real good examples. Those are the examples of getting the farthest removed from the ecosystem that's driving it. So when you have, especially in Iberia Parish, and I do work for I've done work for a lot of different municipalities. Iberia Parish has by far been one of the worst because of Spanish Lake, Lake Foss Point, the entire basin, the port complex. You've got such an enormous amount of area for these animals to breed. If you don't catch them as they're coming in, as they're migrating each season, as the young are pushed out to establish new colonies, if you don't keep on top of that, eventually you end up where you were 2 years ago. And we've kept a tight lid on that over the past 24 months. We've done a real good job. And we're seeing a noticeable difference. We're not catching near as many adult beavers as we were. The juvenile beavers that we're catching smaller litter sizes, which means that we're breaking the breeding cycle. And that's where we want to be. And so just to kind of give you an idea, at any given time, we're usually trapping about 6 areas, sometimes as low as 3, sometimes as high as 10. And those are areas with active beaver dams or active culverts that are completely inundated. And so that, you start looking back over the last 2 years at just even if you don't include the August flooding, if you look at just the number of times that you've had light flooding in the parish, when you look at a major drainage, like the Orange Grove subdivision area, that major drainage off of Darnell Road, when you go and physically go walk that coulee, and you come across a beaver dam that's 20 feet wide and 6 feet tall, that entire appurtenance is holding 6 feet of water before it starts raining. It doesn't take long for an area like that to become inundated with floodwater because the water has nowhere to go. When you get on the backside of Squirrel Run subdivision, the backside of that, there's 5, 60, or 72-inch culverts there. I can walk through them, so there's 72-inch culverts. All 4 of those culverts were blocked with 4 foot of mud. So you've got a 6-foot culvert that's only capable of moving 2 feet of water. When you go down there and you actually see the problem, it's not hard to understand why you have such a flooding issue when you have such a large amount of rain come down at one time. And so we've been able to mitigate those types of stresses on the drainages, and that's very important. I know that the constituents that each of you represent, I know flooding is very important right now. It's a hot and heavy subject, not here only, Vermilion Parish, St. Landry Parish, down in Berwick and Bayou Vista, other municipalities that I work with, everybody's got the same complaint right now. And that is, what are you doing about the drainage? And there's only so much you can do with an excavator and putting culverts in and putting storm drains in and cleaning leaves. If you've got an animal like a beaver working against you and you're not capable of handling that issue, it will only get worse. And so I commend the parish on taking the initiative to give us the opportunity just to do the pilot program and now to prove its success. So moving forward and looking forward, we want to keep the program rolling along. It's making some strides, but when you've got such a large area, you're going to have reinfestations. And the idea now is we don't anticipate to continue catching this volume of beaver, but what you want to do is protect the investment that you've made over the last 2 years. Stopping a program like this for 12 months would likely put you back where you were. And that's the message that is probably most important here, is that the money spent monthly is simply a retainer for the services rendered as needed. And we're hoping that need subsides a little bit, but that's not that's not the time to say, hey, we did a good job, now let's start cutting back, because you'll quickly end up right back where you were. And that was proven with the unsuccessful attempts at hiring part-time people to come in and do a weekend job. You've got a full-time job out there. It's actually more than that. The closer you get to something like Spanish Lake, that whole area is just prime. There's only so much right-of-way that the parish has access to that we have access to trap. With the amount of private land that exists, and we do trap from many private landowners at their own expense. And that greatly helps the parish when private landowners that have enough money to hire a trapper like myself come in and take the initiative to do something on their own land. That just helps the parish out by decreasing the number of animals that are going to move off of that land. So we're moving forward. The program is working exactly like we set it up to work. There were some questions about numbers. How many are we catching? We're trying to catch them all. That's the only way to put it.
Good answer.
When you get to a drainage, we try not to leave any there. We can't help the ones that are going to move in next year, and they will move in. But we don't. I don't dispatch Public Works. I don't want to waste their time or resources to come dig out a dam prematurely. So a lot of times I'm getting calls from Public Works, hey, where are we on this? Where are we on that? And I try to communicate that to them. Hey, look, it's going to take another week with the rains every week, the up and down water. Sometimes we lose traps, or some areas that we were trapping are not accessible for a few weeks. We try to leave a small footprint on the headlands surrounding these right-of-ways, especially on private land. So sometimes it might take a month, it might take 6 weeks to trap one area, where another area may only take 2 weeks. If we've got to bring in four-wheelers and other equipment, whereas some of them we can pull up with a truck and trap it on foot, those things come into play. So it's a work in progress. It's a very steady work in progress. I do want to touch real quickly that the seasons are very cyclical. So we've got like about a three-month window from January to March that's very, very busy. Right before the females den up to have their offspring. And then that following 3 months, April to August, very slow period, very little movement. Just the males typically. September, November, it cranks back up, and that's when we probably catch the most beaver in the parish. Early spring, the late fall, before winter and summer. So we're more active in the ecosystem during those times. The beaver are more active, so when they're moving, we're moving. So if you're looking at it, and I'm not sure if you all get the monthly report that I'm sending, it goes to Public Works for sure, and if any of you are interested, I'm sure Mike Broussard could pass that to you. But basically, it's just a quick one-liner on each area that we're trapping, and it may be worth you getting a copy of that so you'll know if we're actually in your district working. And it's not very detailed, but it does say where we're trapping and at which stage of the trapping process we're in. I do want to give a quick little shout out to Herman Broussard and Joey Lopez. The relationship between my company and them has been very symbiotic. They need me, they call me, I need them, I call them. It's just been a really good flow. They run a tight ship over there. Those guys are getting it done. And anything I need, they're there. And when they come across something that they think I need to know about, they're letting me know immediately. So they're doing a great job with that. The scope of service did not change from the first contract to the second contract. So we kept the scope of service the same, and the monies being spent on those services did not go up. So we've kept that contract the same for both years. And that's about it. I mean, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I know we have one for Mr. Napier at least.
Mr. Schaefer it is, right?
It
Mr. Schaefer, I want to tell you, very informative presentation.
Thank you.
This is the first time that we as a council, this term that we've heard from our nuisance guy. And I want to tell you, I represent the Orange Grove area. And I realized after becoming a councilman what beavers can do. I was amazed at what I saw when Herman showed me pictures of a beaver dam. And they do, believe me, they do block water, and it's a big problem. When this was first brought to us, when we were a couple months in and we allocated the money, believe me, I was skeptical about, do we need to spend money to trap beavers? Let's get a bunch of guys, get some guns, and go kill them. That was my.
And I wish it were that easy.
Believe
Believe me, I wish it were that
I know
easy.
now it's not that easy.
Right.
But I want to tell you, it's what you're doing, in my opinion, is working. Like I say, we've I'm well aware of what's going on, at least at Orange Grove, because I get calls about it, and those people, they stay on it. They've seen those beaver dams. They call me because we've had them reoccur. So you could break them down, and they'll come back,
Well,
right?
they will,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
And let me tell you, your constituents see me in the field, and they come up to me, hey, who are you, what are you doing out here? They're concerned about their neighborhoods, and when they find out who I am and what I'm doing, I'm telling you, they're very, very
They wanna
thankful.
see you, right.
They do. When are you
Yeah.
coming back?
Yeah.
How long do you think it's gonna take? We've been watching this water
Right.
stand for months, and I explain to them how the process works. I take the time to explain, listen, it's, a lot of people want instant gratification, you know,
yeah,
and I tell them, listen, it's gonna take me a little time, but when you go to walk around the block, and most of it, that's what it is, people that are walking the neighborhood. When
Sure.
you go to walk around the block day after tomorrow, there won't be any
Right.
water here. I said,
Well,
Public Works is coming tomorrow to dig it out,
I
and they're
ju-
very happy about that.
I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. I think we all needed to understand exactly what we allocating money for, and at least for me, it has been very good to have that as part of what we doing, you know, so.
Fantastic.
Good,
Thank you.
good job, and thanks for the presentation.
And one other thing, my company, I represent the Louisiana Trappers Association. I'm the secretary of it. I also sit on the board of directors for Louisiana Wildlife Federation. I sit on 2 councils for wildlife and fisheries. We stay up on the latest technology, trapping and otherwise. And as a caveat to that, there are circumstances that arise where we run into beavers that we absolutely cannot catch. And whether it's just the nature of the drainage itself, where the access is limited, and when we run into those situations, we have applied for and should soon receive our permit from Wildlife and Fisheries to be able to night hunt those with thermal optics and suppressed rifles only in the urban areas. But that's going to be one means to eradicate those last couple of beaver that we sometimes do have trouble catching. It's not a perfect science. You're dealing with the wild animal, and a lot of times you're dealing with limited access. And that's always been the case. And I've had to go to multiple private landowners on my own to gain access to land that the parish didn't have access to. And it's worked out very well. Like I say, people are happy to see us. So anytime you have a question, don't hesitate to send it to me,
Thank you
either
so
through
much.
Herman or through Mike Broussard. Both of them have my email and can get in touch with me. And like I say, I'll entertain those anytime.
Any other
Thank you.
questions or comments from Mr. Chambers?
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next, we have Mr. Ray Freeman with the Executive Director of the Iberia Parish Hurricane Levy and Conservation District to provide an update of the district's operations. Mr. Freeman?
Thank y'all for allowing us to come here tonight. As you know, as a coastal parish, Iberia Parish is at tremendous risk for flooding and tidal influences, which is why the Levy Hurricane Conservation District was created in the first place. And that's a very sharp and specific example of how tides influence us. If we look at just last week with Tropical Storm Cindy, and we look at the flooding that occurred with virtually no rain. Now, we know that since then we've had a lot of rain, but at that specific point, we had virtually no rain. And you know, we have some people here from Delcom that can tell you all the flooding that took place in Delcom. The ballpark was underwater. You know, Bayou Carlin Cove was underwater. The streets and quite a few houses had water all around them, and I don't know how much damage was caused by that, but that was no rain, just tidal influences. Add to that what was also taking place at the same time at the Port of Iberia. The Port of Iberia had so much water on it, they had some businesses that really couldn't operate because there was water in their yards. The water came up as high as, you know, the railroad track to the rail of the railroad track. In other words, above the cross ties. So, you know, the water was that high and we didn't have any rain. So tidal influences are very, very important. And that's one of the things that the Levy District is concerned with and we have been working to take care of. We have also been working to make sure that if we place a flood protection system in place, that we can get water out when there is rain. So it's a multifaceted design. You know, Iberia Parish Levy District, in coordination with you, Iberia Parish Council, who have always been in support of us, with the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority of the state, with the Port of Iberia, and with countless residents, have put together a plan for Iberia Parish. And it's 19 miles of flood protection, 19.2 miles of flood protection, which includes levees, flood protection structures in 23 channels, the 5 very large pumping stations, 2 highway gates, and all of this to protect us from the inundation of floods, both interiorly, when on the protected side of the levee, and from the outside from the forces of tides. So tonight what we are doing is we are announcing the Flood Relief Initiative. A flood relief initiative will be implemented by a dedicated millage. It has the power to fund the flood protection system that will pump out millions of gallons of water, as well as protect us from several other millions of gallons of water that want to flow in every time we have a south wind. It has the potential to lower our flood insurance rates. It will save lives, save homes, and save our businesses. It will be good for Iberia Parish to protect us from storm surge. The initiative will be, is planned to be a 5 mil that will be placed on the November ballot. 5 mills, to give everybody an idea of what that is, on a $200,000 home, that's approximately $5.21 a month. It's not an extreme amount, although we know anything more is more, but we think that it's a good investment into the future of Iberia Parish. The measure will raise about $2.9 million annually, and we'll use that money to leverage other funds from the state and federal government. There are funds available, but they want to know that you have skin in the game. So we have to be able to, as the Iberia Parish residents, have to be able to put up something so that we can go to them, get some matching funds, and build real protection for Iberia Parish. We know that this council has always been in support of us, and we are asking for your continued support as we move forward. There will be a few more steps that will have to take place. We're not asking for any action from you tonight. In the weeks to come, it'll come to your committee meeting and eventually to your regular meeting, and we will ask for permission / authorization to move forward and place it on the ballot. That will the next step, and the next thing that we're asking you for is to help us actually fund the election, because we know that the election costs, there are election costs involved, and we need the funds to be able to put the election so that we can place it before the voters of Iberia Parish. That cost is approximated at $20,000 by the Secretary of State, and we hope that in those future meetings y'all would consider that funding. We want to thank you for your consideration. I want to ask all of those people who are in support of our levy process to please just stand up, tell us who, to show us what support we have, if y'all don't mind. Anybody who's here in support of that. And we want y'all to know that the people of Iberia Parish, thank you. The people of Iberia Parish that we are in communication with support this effort, and we ask you to help us move it forward. I would take any questions from you at this point.
Any questions for Ray, Mr. Trump?
Mr. Ray, as a representative of District 13 from the town of Delcombe to the port, I'm in total support of y'all putting up this millage. And any legislation you need sponsored here, I'd be glad to sponsor it. And I think we need this for our businesses at the port, Delcombe, all the way across the parish, to give us flood protection. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments for Mr. Freeman? Mr.
I
Richard?
just want to congratulate you. I think you did an extremely good job of articulating your presentation. And Ray, as usual, I'm supporting your efforts. And I think it's something that Iberia Parish should really consider for the well-being of this parish and for the longevity of this complete parish as we know it today. I just want to tell you that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. We
Thank you.
appreciate your presentation. Right, next, we're moving to comments from the general public on agenda items. First, we'll have representative of Coulter, Champagne, Slavin and Company to present the financial audit report for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2016.
Good evening, thank
Yes,
you. As you're aware, I'm here to present the financial statement audit for December 31st, 2016.
Can you give us your name, please?
Matthew Margaglia.
Thank you.
In your packets, you provided the blue bound copy. That's our full audit report. We will just hit some of the highlights tonight. First thing I want to go over is our independent auditor's report. In that report is where we state our opinion on the council's financial statements.
Matt, can you pull the mic a little closer?
Sure. That better?
Yes. Thank you.
We issued our independent auditor's report on the council's financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2016. And in that report, we issued an unmodified opinion. It's considered a clean opinion or the best opinion that we as your auditors can issue. In addition to our independent auditor's report, we also issued an auditor's report on your federal awards. As the parish shall receive significant amount of dollars and cents from the federal government, and we are required to test that for specific compliance requirements from the federal government. We looked at the major programs of the parish, and in that report, we issued an unmodified opinion on compliance in regards to those federal programs in which we tested. So again, a clean opinion on the federal programs that we tested. The third report that we have in here that we as the auditors issued is our report on internal control. We look at, as a governmental agency, we look at some of the internal controls and compliance with some rules and regulations, some state laws and things like that that could be applicable to the financial statements. Our procedures are not designed to express an opinion on those. We're not required to go in depth to issue a full opinion on those. But as we're doing our audit, when we come across issues that we consider significant or material, we bring it to the attention of the full council in the matter of findings or exceptions. And this year we have a couple of things that I did want to bring to y'all's attention in regards to that. The first item that I want to mention is the a budget noncompliance. This is a repeat finding that we had in last year's report. The original budget for 2016, which was adopted late. It should have been adopted in 2015 around the December timeframe. However, certain funds were not adopted until 2016. That's not in accordance with your parish charter. Again, that's a repeat from the last year just due to the timing. We had to make y'all aware that it kind of did transfer over from one year to the next. The second item is related to the public library fund. It's another budget noncompliance issue. The actual revenues in that fund failed to meet budgeted by more than 5%. In accordance with state law, when there's a greater than 5% variance, the budget should be amended to adjust for those variances. There were adjustments made to that fund. However, by the time we finished all of the audit numbers, it was greater than 5% variance. In the Acadiana Fairgrounds, we had another repeat finding from the prior year, and that's related to sales tax noncompliance. The Acadiana Fairgrounds, most specifically the RV park, was selling transactions that were subject to state and local sales tax, goods and services, food, beverages, things like that. In our audit, we were unable to determine exactly when and how much was remitted to the state in accordance with those taxes that were collected. The final comment that we have in here, it was a management letter related to the Acadiana Fairgrounds, and this again is a repeat of the prior year. The Acadiana Fairgrounds experienced an operating loss of over $169,000 this year, exclusive of depreciation. Due to the significance of that and where they end up at the end of the year, we wanted to bring it to your attention. It's not technically a finding, but it's significant enough for us to make mention to the council that as of December 31st, there were significant losses in the Acadiana Fairgrounds. In addition to that, there's a little bit of financial data that I want to go over, just some brief highlights of where y'all stand as of December 31st, 2016. For government funds of the council, which does not include the component units, Your total revenues from all sources for the governmental funds was about $26.9 million. Your total expenditures was about $32 million. At the end of the year, you end up having a $48.5 million fund balance. That sounds like a lot, but approximately 95% of that is dedicated or restricted by sales taxes, property taxes, or things like that. So it's not free money to spend wherever. It's dedicated for specific intents and purposes. So really, you have about 5% of that that's available, mostly in your general fund, to spend on odd and end type stuff. And that's the governmental funds for everybody except the component units. Specifically to the general fund, which is where most of your unrestricted dollars and cents are, you generated about $5.3 million this year in revenues from all sources in that fund. You expended about $5.9 million, and that leaves you with a leftover fund balance of $3 million. Those numbers are relatively flat from the prior year before, so we're not seeing significant increases in revenue, we're not seeing significant increases in expenditures, and the fund balance is about the same. So across the board, the general fund kind of kept up with where it was supposed to and where it has in the prior years. And some of that information is included in the little handout that was included in your packet. That's the highlights from here. If you want a more detailed summary, if you'd like to read one, Kim has prepared the management discussion and analysis on page 5 of the blue binder. It's about 8 or 9 pages long. It gives you a real good summary snapshot of what happened throughout the year, where the dollars and cents were, where they were spent, coming from and going to, and a brief look forward of what administration thinks is going to happen in the upcoming fiscal year. If there are any questions?
Mr. Gustafson?
Y'all, last year, I remember when we went through the whole procedure, y'all had a trend line showing the revenues and
Mhm.
expenses. Is that in this book?
It's not in the book, in the handout that was given to you. It's in a bar chart form.
You got it in your packet.
This is, okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
presentation. Next, we have persons being considered for appointment to the parish boards or commissions to address the council. Are there any persons here that have applied for a board or commission that would like to address the council? Yes, sir. If you can step to the podium and give us your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Frank Stoltz. I currently serve on the 911 Communication Board District, and I think I was filling a temporary position or the remainder of a position of Mr. Duran, and it's coming up for renewal. So I've attended, I think, 4 meetings since appointment, and feels really good to get back into it after having a 10-year hiatus of being off of it. But I'd appreciate y'all's vote again, if you see fit, to allow me to serve for another 4 years.
Any questions, comments from Mr. Stokes? Mr. Trong?
Frank, it's nice to have you back.
Thank you, sir. Nice to be back.
Thank you for coming back in front of us, and thank you for being willing to serve. Appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other persons that are being considered for appointment that want to address the council? I have no other requests for anyone to speak on any agenda items, so if I could get a motion to close public comments. Moved by Mr. Trahan, second by Mr. Michael Landry. Roll call. Did I miss it?
I think it was Tom.
That motion carries.
You okay?
That was Amanda.
It was,
Close enough.
you didn't break it.
Moving to reports from the Finance Administrative Action, none. Reports from the parish or other governmental agencies, none. The Public Works reports for closed work orders dated June 5th through the 9th and 12th through the 16th of 2017, and open work orders dated June 20th, 2017 was all included in our packet. No special business. Any council member announcements? Mr. Dugas?
Yes, I'm sorry everybody left so early, but I did have an opportunity to attend the coastal restoration presentation in Houma yesterday, and it's very impressive. We've all been hearing about what they're gonna do and how they're gonna do this, but actually see it in place and doing what they said it was gonna do is pretty remarkable. They have completed all the east-west levees in the project, and now they're working on north-south levees. But just those levees in place with the control structures they have prevented any tidal surge from this last. So it's working, it's doing what it's supposed to. Colonel, I can't remember his name, he was a colonel with the Army Corps of Engineers, said he's been authorized to spend $10 billion across the state of Louisiana. But the thing that made Terrebonne so successful is they did it themselves. They didn't wait on anybody. They passed their own tax. As the taxes were generated and they started doing work, the people began to see the efforts that they were doing and came back and supported another tax. So right now they're generating over $200 million a year in taxes to fund that levy, and they're moving forward. And I think the story here is Iberia Parish needs to have a levy to protect our investment, and we need to take ownership. We need to do this ourselves. And just ask anybody in my area who's already in the Chapalaya Basin levee district. That levee has protected us for years. It does its job, and it does it well. And there's no doubt that a coastal levee will do the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dugas.
Joe.
Any other council member announcements?
Natalie,
Mr. Olivier?
I just want to thank all those people that helped during the last tropical storm that came through the area at the fire station in Grand Marion and the Lydia, in the back sandbags. So the effort was really outstanding, and everybody was served well. Thank you. And again, thanks to Public Works for providing what y'all did for us also. Thank you.
Any other council member announcements? Moving to parish president announcements, Mr. Richard.
For information purposes, due to to the recent rains from Tropical Storm Cindy and daily showers, we have produced increased population of mosquitoes, and therefore Iberia Parish Mosquito Abatement Program or District will be doing area spraying over the next several days, starting tomorrow and Friday, and also Saturday and Monday. We're trying to get this taken care of before the 4th of July, so if anyone have to contact or have any questions about mosquitoes, just contact Mosquito Control at 365-4933, or just call here at the courthouse at 365-8246. I'm going to yield some of my, I'll give a little Public Works update, then I'm going to yield the rest of my time to something that we deserve to hear information or more information about, and that's drainage. But over the past 2 weeks, Public Works have done culvert inspections in District 7 and District 10, and some field drainage work in District 3, District 10, 12, and 13. We also did a lot of roadside drainage work in District 3, District 9, District 10, District 13, and District 14. And in District 9, 11, and 12, we had some grading work that was actually performed. Public Works did a lot of hauling of sandbags for a tropical storm Cindy, and I want to compliment all the council members while I'm here as well. I think we stayed very much so in contact with everything that was going on during the Depression, and we're getting better at it, even though it's not something that I want to keep practicing, but we are getting better at it. And going back to Public Works, road crossing, we did a road crossing in District 9, some road patching in District 5, District 6, District 9, District 11, 13, and 14. We did some road repairs in District 9 and 12, side boom work in District 10, and tree trimming in District 10 and 13. We have a lot of work going on in Public Works, and every now and then I like to say this because the people need to know that the people that we have working our Public Works Department, they're really doing a lot of work. Not to say that the people working in any other department isn't doing just the amount or more, but I like to give compliments to Public Works because it is a big job and a big responsibility that we have. Right now, we'd like to get Finstamaker to come up and talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, Madam Chair.
Yes, Your Honor.
To come up and talk a little bit
I'm
about
in
some of
court.
the drainage work that we perform, that we
I'm in
hoping to
court.
perform in Iberia Parish. Okay? And that's Mr. Dax with Finstamaker. Thank you.
No, you may have to. You may have to, like, refresh on there, so it starts. We did that last time.
There you go. I'll try.
Good evening, Council. Thank you very much for having me. As Mr. Richard introduced, my name is Dax Duet. I'm a licensed professional civil engineer with CH Finstamaker Associates out of Lafayette. And I want to introduce two people with me, Dr. Robert Miller with our firm, one of our experts in regards to drainage and coastal hydrology. And I got Mr. Austin Doucette with our company, who's a summer intern, a current student at ULL in civil engineering. So I invited him to see, how, as I like to say, how the route is made in terms of policy and council and how that affects us as engineers, et cetera. So Mr. Richard asked me to come tonight. We've presented before in the past. I've presented to the council in the past, whether it was T-Bayou or the other drainage. So tonight, Mr. Richard asked me to come. We came to the last meeting. I could not be in attendance. I was on vacation, a previously scheduled event, but nevertheless, so I want to talk about a proposal that you all have in front of you from our firm. But before I get to that proposal, I kind of want to give you all a background, if I may, on how we got to this point. I think it's important when we talk about drainage, when we talk about expenditures of money, that we get the facts, that we get the full story on how we want to attack this. And then we can try to see how we can answer questions and things of that nature. So I want to go back a little bit. Back in March of 13th of this year, I got a call from Mr. Richard as the parish president. In my opinion, his mission is to set the wall to climb, the goals for the parish, et cetera. And he made it very clear to me that drainage was an important function, an important thing to his administration, as it is with every parish. And, you know, I often say parishes have the biggest land mass, and yet they tend to have, especially in the parish regions, the lower population, and it's always a battle of money. And Iberia Parish is no different, whether it's in Lafayette Parish, and I live in Youngsville, it's the same case there and everywhere. So, so he wanted to express drainage. And so one of the things he mentioned was, Dax, we have a lot of channels, you know, which ones will we do first? Now, you know, I want to caveat, I am an engineer. I'm not an on-the-ground, know every single little thing that goes on, and that's, you know, people like Herman and Dexter and those individuals in your public works group know the specifics. My job, and I told this to Mr. Richard, was I want to educate as best as I can you on the questions to think about from an engineering standpoint to protect the parish's interest, liability, and also to educate the public in the best way we can. You know, drainage is, you know, we can take 10 people, whether they're engineers or just non-engineers, doesn't really matter, and talk about drainage, and we'll probably all have a little different twist on it, right? We know water goes downhill, and we know if it can't, you got to pump it, and we know some basic things, but especially Iberia Parish is unique. As Mr. Freeman mentioned earlier, you are directly connected to a tidally influenced area, and so we realize in South Louisiana we're very flat, so we fight what's called tailwater. You know, we can have the widest ditches in the world, but if the water level where it's draining into is higher than the water that currently exists and what that storm produced, it's going to be hard for it to get out. You know, and then I think that's what causes a lot of flooding in South Louisiana, and of course, as Mr. Ray Freeman mentioned, tidal surge and things of that nature. So at that March 13th meeting, what can we do? I got all these channels. Which ones do I do first, Dax? And I said, well, let me think. You know, there's a lot of things when we talk about channels. Each one of you represent a different district. Each one of you have or has a desire to clean your channels first. You know, that's just a natural instinct, right? So I said, Larry, the only thing I'm thinking, you know, from an engineering perspective, excuse me, what can we do to be objective, whether it's taking politics out or taking population in terms of, well, this channel has no population, this channel does, try to be objective. So I got with Dr. Miller and we talked about it, and you know, we've been having models, if you will, models or mathematical type things that we use to try to predict things, just like no different than the weather. And we already have that in-house, so we said, well, what we could do is pretend we clean a channel. And the way we do that is we adjust the numbers to make it look like it's clean. Water goes downhill, but if it experiences a lot of debris, beaver dams, a lot of trees falling in, well, we all know intuitively it's going to block water from flowing, as the gentleman mentioned earlier on the beaver program. So, and we can predict that channel's ability to drain water that it was naturally made for, okay? And so what we did, we came to the parish at the request of Mr. Richard, or at least I presented to him a proposal. Just want to give you a little history real quick. It was like around $24,000 to do what I call a sensitivity analysis. We did that, and boy, this is tough if I don't have this not working right here. And so we quickly, we did a sensitivity analysis, and what that yielded, you can go to the next slide. So real quick, I don't presume you're going to know all the details on this map. This is a map of your parish. But if you look, there's a lot of blue lines everywhere. You'll have a lot of channels. A lot of channels. Some are ditches. Get bigger, we call them coulees, and you get bigger, you call them rivers and bayous and things of that nature. But you have a lot of little small channels, but they ultimately go to major outfalls, which ultimately go out to the bays and things of that nature. Next slide, please. So what we did is we, let me back up too, just as a point of reference, you know, when we talk about drainage, I just want to reiterate that, you know, I think it was about approximately 2 years ago, I had spoken to the council about the T-Bayou cleaning project. And so we got that one done, or at least 6 of the 11 miles done, the most critical miles that really needed to be cleaned. And that we studied it, we predicted the outcome, we cleaned it, and so that is a check mark in the parish's box. Because it's a reoccurring thing. Every year you have to think about maintaining this. Of all the different agenda items you have, one of the vital roles of the parish is to maintain its drainage systems. When I say drainage, I want to be clear too, there's 2 types of drainage. You have your local small little culverts that are at people's houses. They're the ditches along the roads. That culverts may get crushed, or they're undersized, or things of that nature. When I talk about drainage, I'm talking about after the water gets out those areas and gets into these major outfalls. That's what the parish needs to keep maintained as best as possible. Whether it's people dumping debris in it, whether it's beavers, creating dams, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide, please. So what we did is we prepared a model, and what it did is you see these colors going on, and I don't want to get into the details. I'll spend 5 or 10 seconds on this, but what the model showed was which channels, objectively, is the most sensitive to cleaning. And what I mean by sensitive, reduces water level. So if I take an existing channel that is a certain degree of clean or not clean, and we apply factors, it's coefficients. I don't want to get technical with that. That's not the point. And then we assume it's clean by changing those factors to represent more cleaned scenarios. If the water level comes down, theoretically, forget about tide, forget about all that, then that channel has an ability to react much better than another one. And so there were some channels that glared to us. For example, Park Purdue. For example, Delahousie Canal, Segura, and there was some sense of priority. So we did that work. Y'all funded, the parish funded about $24,000 to do that. What that does is it gives the parish president and staff and y'all an ability to kind of use some objective means of figuring out which channels need to be cleaned first, recognizing that doesn't, all the channels could eventually get cleaned, but you only got so much money per year, so you need some kind of plan. So to the best of my knowledge, there was never really a plan before. It was basically which one, more of a reaction mode. And, you know, when we talk about, yes, this was what I call a little mini study. And, you know, the public perception studies are never taken positively because it feels like it's money. But the reality of it is, if I got to stand up here and say, okay, which channel do you want clean first? Which do you want clean first? There won't be any agreement. So there has to be some tiebreaker, right? And so I would submit to you that this would be, in my opinion, money well spent, regardless of who did it. That's not the point, whether it's us or some other engineering firm. The point is you have something. You have some idea of which ones are going to be more sensitive. Next slide, please. What came out of that little project was another meeting by Mr. Richard. And in that meeting, there was another engineering firm that joined us, Duplantis Engineering, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Richard, they are managing y'all what they call Go Mesa funds.
Exactly.
Which is, what's that?
Yeah, that's it.
Which is basically some grant money that the parish is seeking to help fund drainage, fund ways to better handle our stormwater. In that meeting, we discussed, Herman and Dexter was there, which channels could the parish clean with its own forces, both personnel and equipment. I mean, that's the first priority, because that would be considered free. I don't mean free, but you're already accommodating their salary and things of that nature, right? So this table right here, for example, on the major outfalls, were those channels that were identified by Herman's group as channels that they can do on their own. Okay? Next slide, please. What we determined in this phase was which channels, and they're the guys, they're the boots on the ground that know these channels, which ones would be problematic for their staff, whether it's logistics of actually getting to these channels. Rural channels have a lot of trees, overgrown land rights to get to these channels. These particular 5 channels were those designated by Mr. Richard as his priorities, maybe not a good word, but his sense of urgency in terms of which channels would be deemed first to clean. We looked at the Parc Purdue system, the Delaware Canal, the Blanc-Coulee-Pédillance, and the Norris Branch Canal. So in that particular meeting, it was talked about, well, how do we go, let's go about it. Dax, Mr. Richard was very quick to say, let's go clean these channels. Well, we have to go out to public bid. Let me remind you, public bid law for a public agency, anything over $150,000, you may know that, has to go to public bid. And so now you got contractors, they need a bid on something, right? What are they bidding? So somebody got to create a set of plans. It ain't complicated, but you can't just say, I want you to clean from here to here, because the contractors are going to say, how you want me to clean it? And things of that nature. So we have to create some plan. We have to do some amount of surveying. We got to go out there and figure out how we're going to clean, where we're going to clean, what's our challenges, do we have land rights, things of that nature. But one important thing came up, and it came up between us as engineers, between Fenstermaker and a completely independent engineering firm, Duplantis Engineering, as to, wow, what if we clean that channel, we open it up, and we send much more water than what was going south, than what was going before? Could we have adverse impacts? And we all like, well, gee, on one hand, I'm a parish, I'm supposed to be cleaning these channels, and now I got to fight this. It's kind of like a cat and mouse game, So Mr. Richard asked me to prepare a proposal, and that's really what I want to get to look at these 5 channels, to survey them, to do an impact analysis, to answer the question, are we going to send more water downstream and cause people that are already flooding to maybe have more water coming their way? Are we going to open up Pandora's box? If we don't, fine. Let's create those construction plans and let's get it out to bid.
Actually, I was going to use 2 engineering companies to do this at the beginning. One was Fenstermaker and the other one was DDG. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Fenstermaker was going to do Delaware, DeBlanc, and maybe Norris, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have it in front of me. And DDG was going to do Parc Purdue A and B. Well, DDG came back and said they recommend that we use one engineering company to do it, which is Fenstermaker. simply because we would have all of the information, because when you're starting to do these analysis, these channels or canals run into each other. Am I correct in saying that's the way they said it? So I just wanted to bring that little part in there. Sorry for that.
And I'm appreciative of that, but again, it's you know, of course, yes, it involves fence to maker, that's great, but at the end of the day, this is your parish, and I think everybody would agree, I hope everybody would agree that we gotta maintain our drainage, and things of that nature. We just finished hearing Ray Freeman talk about that, and what he was referring to was more what we call the interior. Whether you're looking at a levee or whatever type of flood protection device you're looking at, the interior, we gotta worry about our interior. We gotta worry about our basics in terms of drainage. So, what I want to do, next slide, please. I don't know, I believe it's in your packets. One slide next. I want to get right to the numbers. So what I want to do is, my job is to educate you on my proposal, what I'm thinking. It relates to dollars. So why should I pay you this amount of money? What is this going to? So I think everybody has a proposal, and the proposal certainly details our proposed plan of attack, scope of services, if you will. But there's 3 channel systems we're looking at. The first one is channel system number 1, Park Purdue AB and Norris Branch. That is that system of channels that ultimately goes, I believe, into Lake Panier area. And so if you look, very simple little matrix here for the audience. We have a couple of columns. We need to actually go do some surveying out there. And when I say surveying, I don't know when was the last time, and maybe Herman, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we want to just drive a boat, drive some craft. Some of these channels are real tight, so, and say, where is the obstructions that are underwater that we can't see? You know, we don't know if people's throwing couches or throwing trash or something that we can't even see that's cutting the channel's cross-section in half that we don't even know. Let's find those spots, survey them, say, here's our coordinates so that we can know where they're at, so we can tell a contractor where to go. Let's take some cross-sections, literally elevations through the channel, so that Dr. Miller can update his model and run the prediction. Modeling and reporting, that is the action of predicting if there'll be any impact. We're gonna send more water downstream, or we're gonna raise the water level such that it comes out the banks, otherwise wouldn't have come out the banks, or are we gonna raise the water level higher, than the base flood elevation? You know, give you an example. If we clean a channel, or we do channel improvements, or we do any drainage improvements, and we raise the water level a half a foot, well, that's a lot. But if the base flood elevation is a foot above that half a foot, where people should be managing themselves in terms of FEMA flood zones and flood insurance, did we really create an impact? Yes, we did, but the land, they should be building up higher anyway. And that's part of the floodplain management process. That's a whole separate story. So that portion, those costs in that column, represent about 25% of our total proposal, which is $204,000. Let me keep going, because so far, okay, Dax, that's great. Y'all surveyed it. We do some impact analysis. Okay, what do we get out of it? Well, now I come in and do the actual plans, the engineering plans. I can tell you my experiences with T-Bayou, one of the things we had was, do you have the right-of-way? Do you have the servitudes in place? There are servitudes in place that the parish has. That doesn't mean people didn't build things, improvements, way within the servitude. And so you can imagine, I'm not, you know, to go clean a channel, and oh, by the way, we also need to remove your beautiful trees that you have, or remove, that was some of the problems with T-Bayou. And so I think we worked with the residents. We actually had them mark trees that they'd like to keep. I think that was a good faith effort of the parish. And I think we kept every one of those trees for the most part, and everything else came out. There was a lot of trees cut. So I think that's that effort, that's that cost. I'm sure I'm going to be coming to 1 or 2 meetings, with public meetings with residents who's along those channels, and you're going to take down my barn that I built right on the bank. Well, technically legal, I'm no attorney, but I would say it's in the easement. But then, you know, we want to be good stewards, right? And next is the cost for inspection. When we did T-Bayou, the parish, Herman's group, did most of the inspection. You know, when you got a contractor working out there, we want to make sure they're doing a good job. We want to make sure they're not lollygagging, et cetera, et cetera. So I threw a couple of dollars in there just to go out every once in a while with Herman. But really, the bulk of that cost, if you figure a contractor is going to be cleaning a channel for months. So really, the parish is going to do that. So that's a cost savings. And permitting. You know, it's another thing. You you always balance, you know, at one hand, you gotta maintain your channels, but then you gotta worry about Corps of Engineer permits if you are, digging. Let me be clear, the intent on cleaning channels is not to dig them deeper. The intent is to clean up a silted area that's obviously silted and just clean, not necessarily dig, which brings it to a whole different level. So we're looking at about $204,000. I submit to you that you will end up in a tangible product. You will have plans to go to construction. Now, this does not cover construction costs. And I can tell you, and Larry can talk about it, I know if y'all heard the word Go Mesa, that is going to be one funding source that Duplantis Engineering, that Mr. Richard's been working with, is managing to try to get those funds. And I will tell you, it's like anything. You got to have some skin in the game. We need to have some plans ready so that when that money that's entitled, or I'm saying entitled, that's coming to the parish, that we're ready to use it. Because if it's not used at a certain time, there's always strings attached when you're talking about grant money. It's always strings attached. So we want to have our ducks in a row so that we can be ready and get that money so that we can use to actually do work on the ground. So with that, I'll open it up for questions that you may have.
Questions? Mr. Napier?
Okay, Dax, bear with me. I think I caught everything you said. So the number we're looking at there, for those 3 channels,
It's actually 5. It's 3 channel systems, but there'll be 5 channels in actually your map. When I say a channel system, Park Purdue A and B is connected to Norris, and so we're calling that one system. So there's 5 channels, but
okay.
be as it
fine.
may.
So that gets us to, that 204 gets us to the bid process? Am I understanding you right?
That would get us to the bid process. I would produce 11 by 17 set of plans, size sheets, that guides the contractor in what I want him to do, where I want him to do it, how I want it clean. As a point of reference, T-Bayou, we had type 1, 2, and 3 cleaning. Type 1 is just bush hogging, cutting small little chicken trees, things of that nature. Type 2, bigger trees. Type 3, if y'all didn't see T-Bayou cut. So it's to give them an idea. Yes, it takes us to the bid.
Does that, so are you the project manager to the end of the completion of this?
Yes. Yes, so
That's what that money buys, right?
Yes, it buys surveying,
Yeah,
field
yeah.
surveying, which is a benefit to you, because when we finish with the surveying, we'll give you all the data. Why is that important? Because, for example, maybe some of that surveying data, Ray and CPR can use to update their models. It's because it buys actual plans, it buys my involvement, and my engineering background to guide the process, to make sure the parish is protected, that we don't have a contractor getting a leg up, so to speak. Those type of things.
And that's, and I'm just trying to make sure I understand and everybody else understands in the public that this has not, this isn't gonna get those channels clean. That it gets us to the point where we go out for bid. And do you have any just overall idea, just a budget number that you could put on that, just on overall?
For construction?
Right, to get us to completion.
Construction costs to clean a channel, I would put a budget of about $90,000 a mile. That's what T-Bayou costs.
Not including this?
Forget about that. If, part of my, let me give a good point. When I'm gonna produce some plans to go clean a channel, I'm gonna give the parish a little set of plans, a little spec book, a couple of little technical specs for the contractor to adhere to, and an opinion of probable cost, which is, that's what you're gonna need. Because before you accept the bids, typical protocol for a council is that A, you have to first identify that you have the money to do it. You're really not supposed to bid a job if you don't have the money, that you're playing around with contractors, right?
Right.
So you're supposed to publicly acknowledge what the budget is to clean channel system number 1, okay? Bids come in, they're in budget, let's hope they are. Then you vote to accept the bid, right? When I give you those plans, I'll give you an OPC, opinion of probable cost, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm gonna probably use $90,000 to $95,000 per mile, unless I see Because that's what we have the luxury of knowing what T-Bayou
T-Bayou
costs.
costs,
We have the
right.
luxury, and the actual
That's why I
contractor
was
who did
asking.
it resides in Iberia Parish. So we have a source to find information from.
So on those 5 channels, approximate mileage-wise, I'm just trying to get to a point here.
16.
We have another slide that show you that, but Brian,
16
Let me
miles.
just finish if you
Think
don't
about
mind. Let me
15
finish my
miles.
question and with it, if you don't.
16.06 miles.
16. So just in a ballpark frame of things.
1.5 mil.
How much?
1.5 mil.
Okay, that's where I was getting at. Thank you.
if I can add, I guess Brian, if I can add, the analysis that we would get from the engineering company would give us the ability to know if we want to clean the channel or not. Because if it's going to have an impact in a particular area where we feel it's going to bring more water if we clean it, like for example, if we do the analysis for Norris Canal, and it shows that we're going to bring more water per se to the Lake Pinier area, and it's going to flood out people, we may not want to clean it. But if we just go out and clean it without doing this, then we created a big
No, I
problem.
understand. Sure, I understand.
Okay.
I do. Thank
And I
you.
want to be, and I know that this is being televised, and we need to recognize, and I don't want to, I'll try to keep it in basic terms. A channel naturally forms over time by the amount of water that accumulates and it forms itself. It's the morphology of a channel, how it's created. Channels are not the life-saving blood, if you will, to alleviate flooding. Flooding could be attributed just because there's a culvert undersized downstream of my house, and you put a culvert that you didn't let anybody know, and it's undersized by half the amount. That could be flooding. Channels are not the saving grace of Mother Nature's storms. I mean, if we look at what happened in August, we had a perfect storm. We had all indications, we use these statistics, 500 to 1,000 year storm event, but add to that, I think we had a high tide, and I think we had a south wind. I mean, what we would just hit, okay? Whether these channels were concrete line channels, it would not have, for the most part, made a difference. I think we can acknowledge that. A channel, the cleanliness of a channel is your day-to-day routine storm events, your 2-inch rain, your 3-inch rain, your 1-inch rain, your typical stuff. So it's important I say that because, I think it's a parish's job, for lack of better words, and I've worked for different municipalities before to maintain drainage, just like maintain other things throughout the parish. And this is what this is about, just to keep a channel clean. I mean, Herman, I mean, or anybody, I mean, when's the last time we cleaned T-Bayou, but when's the last time we cleaned Norris Branch, or when's time, so I think it's time, and I think that's what Mr. Richard, as the parish president, is basically saying. It's time to put some boots on the ground. Look, I told him, I said, Larry, I said, well, I can do anything. I don't have to do this study. I mean, yeah, it's money to our firm, but that's not big projects. I mean, it's not. But I'm gonna tell you, I'm here to advise you as your engineering consultant. What's gonna happen if you impact somebody downstream and we have this 3 rows filled with people in the Delcom area or in the Lake Pinier area, excuse me. So I'm just going to ask the questions. I'm being the devil's advocate. And so that's what spurred the conversation. So.
Thank you, Dak.
Finish, Mr. Napier?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Gosselin?
Dax, according to what you're telling us, and I'm very familiar with T-Bayou, but in initial phases, but Fenster is going to do a substantial completion and sign off on it once the project's completed, right, up to specs, correct?
Right. What we did on T-Bayou, it's subjective. We walked it. Did they clean it? Did they have a bunch of debris? One of the things I fear is when you're going to clean it, you're going to put this material off on the side. On T-Bayou, they actually dug and did some burn pits, but they need to put that back to grade because the last thing I want is a sugarcane farmer's land to have to cross a little mound created that water can't drain. So that's kind of what we did. We walked it. A couple of areas I told the contractor, I said, you need to clean that up a little bit, and I relied on Hermanum's group to give me a call. Look, once it gets to construction, I'm available, but I really, I don't want to spend your money by me going out there and watch a contractor play around with dirt. I think that's not a good use of public money. I think your public works department, who's right there, can go do spot checks And so, yes, we would do a final walkthrough, and I would write a letter of substantial completion.
Yeah, because
Or not.
this council gonna have to vote on substantial completion. I know a bunch of
Right,
them
and
gonna
so
be mad.
that'll give you an opportunity, especially if it's in your district, Dax, you can, I've had situations where a council member said, Dax, you can call it substantial completion all you want. I don't think it is. And so we had that conversation, right?
Right. That's good.
Mr. Landry, did you have something?
Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, but your
I'm
projections.
already at
for-
the podium. I'm on the
Projections for
spot.
T-Bayou, how did those projections come out based upon, you know?
Well, let me back up. T-Bayou, you remember, the parish entered into an agreement with the city to co-fund this project. You know, we did I'm gonna call it a study. I hate using the word study because it's always a negative, but we looked at different scenarios. How can we get water out the fastest? We even modeled a scenario where Lake Dotrieve is silted up by 10 feet. We dredge it 10 feet. In other words, it's not blocked. And we showed that that didn't have as much of an impact as many people would think. We showed different scenarios. One of the scenarios is, you don't even have to model it. In general, literature will tell you if you just keep a channel clean, that's probably about a 20% efficiency in its ability to flow. So we didn't put monitoring gauges to see the flow versus before, so I can't answer that. I will tell you, I've had some people tell me that, man, they see water flowing. But again, water flowing, if you have a high tide and the tailwater, which is downstream at Dotrieve, is coming in while you have a storm event, you're not going to see water moving. Is the cleaning of the bayou helping? I don't know, but I think we would all agree if you keep your channels decently clean, it is a natural environment, you're going to be fine. I will tell you on T-Bayou, I personally witnessed several complete blocks. Whether it was an old abandoned flow line from when oil and gas was running rampant, that was completely full of water hyacinth and debris completely blocking the channel, 100% blockage. Every one of these little crossings, these little privately owned wood bridges that landowners were using to cross, that half of them were falling in. And that's a debris trap. That in itself, during a storm, would be to me, that would help a lot. And I think we removed those and we took care of that, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Napier?
One more, Dax. I just want to follow up on what you said. I just want to make sure I understood. When I asked you if you were going to be the project manager on this project, you said yes. In my mind, the project manager takes it from the start to completion, and it's in that number.
Yes.
Did I just understand that you saying, if I understand how you answered to Ricky, was that you don't want us to spend any more money if you called out to go look at stuff along the bayou?
No, I estimated, I have a spreadsheet, I said, okay, during construction, I'm gonna estimate that I go on 3 trips, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever, times. I would submit that this would be what I would call hourly services not to exceed. And so, I mean, you know, I'll know if I keep getting calls over and over and over and over, I know I'm gonna be like, that's probably more than what I was thinking. And I'll alert Mr. Richard, I'll alert her. You know, anything y'all can do to kind of help. Yeah. If it doesn't require engineering judgment, by all means. And look, cleaning a channel ain't rocket science, okay? To some degree, I almost feel bad that I got to do some plans, but somebody got to do the plans.
No,
I mean,
somebody.
You know, somebody got to do it.
I'm a contractor, and they need to be watched.
Right, and so, in my opinion, it includes what it's going to take for me to monitor the project, battle with the contractor if I got to battle with the contractor, you know. If a contractor's taking too much longer, you know, then I'm going to come to the parish and say, y'all want to institute liquidated damages? Just recognize if y'all say yes, they may take us to court, whatever. But that might be $3,000, $4,000 a day in y'all favor. I'm just saying, those are the kind of things that are typical that I do on every project, you know, on a bidding, construction, what we call it CA, construction administration. That's what that is. I agree.
And I'm not, we're not trying to put you on the spot, but, you know, when we're looking at that type of money, you know, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what Fence to Maker.
Now, I'll give my overall disclaimer on any project. I think if there's something that occurs on this project that is reasonable to assume that it's above and beyond that I gotta try to figure out, y'all gonna know. And I can't promise I wouldn't ask for more. I'm gonna be honest. If anybody stands here and said, but I think this is what it's going to take. And I think for right now, that's what we need to look at. Okay. And I think if I come back and ask for more, I got to come defend it, right? And I'm sure you're going to ask me a question, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gustafson?
Dak?
Yes, sir.
How long would you think the process at the point in time that the council would give you the money and you would go out and draw the plans? What is the time period?
I think if you were to vote in favor of this, your parish president is probably gonna be excited, and he's gonna call me a couple of times, and let's get moving. And so the first thing is we'll engage in a little contract, just to, make it binding, right? And then we're gonna wanna go start surveying. But actually before, and maybe Larry can elaborate on this, Mr. Richard's job is, which priority, when we talk about Park Purdue, does he really want to go with Park Purdue first? Does he want to go with Norris Branch? And maybe, Mr. Richard, I'll let you kind of speak on your thoughts on that.
Well,
because that's going to help me answer the question.
Well, what
Maybe
I'm
not
looking to
tonight,
do,
but-
Warren, what I'm looking to do is get Norris Branch Canal actually done. We had a meeting this past week with a whole lot of people in here. We had NRCS, we had engineering companies, we had past parish presidents, we had the mayor, Leroy Landry, Herman Broussard. And we're thinking that if we look at Norris Branch Canal and the impact it would have if we clean it, we may not have to do something so quickly on Park Purdue A and B. So what we're looking at doing right now is the Norris Branch Canal, the Blanc Coulee with Petitance, and also Delahousie Canal. Now, in saying that, we still may have to do Park Purdue A and B, but my plan is to start with Norris Branch. Okay.
And I think when he gives me that marching order, I would then give him a time frame. I think Mr. Richard is going to take a week to survey. I think when we mobilize our survey crews, we probably going to survey everything at one time. While they out there, man, it's going to be hard to get out there. It ain't a hop, skip, and a jump. We probably have to do special craft just to get where we want to go. Dr. Miller's time to do the modeling will be fairly quick for the most part. He'll prepare a report. Once we feel that we're not going to have too much impacts, that we can live with those impacts, if there are any impacts at all, then I'm going to create the plans. For one particular channel, like Norris Branch, I don't know yet. I'm going to give him more. This is a high-level proposal, and then I'm going to be giving him time frames of each one. I'm sure he's going to report to you when appropriate during council meetings. Creating plans for this is fairly simple. That's not what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about notifying residents, which then typically sparks a public meeting or some meeting where residents don't want it clean or they don't want their trees removed. We had that on T-Bayou. It was a packed house of people. And so that could be an issue. So I want to forewarn of that. But at the end of the day, I believe, and I'll rely on attorneys to, and I'm going to work with the parish to make sure we have the legal instruments as far as servitudes go. To say, I believe most of these channels, I think, Herman, correct me if I'm wrong, have a 100-foot servitude. And again, don't quote me on it. There may be certain arrangements legally that were made with property acquisitions that maybe reduce it, but I think on average it's 100, which means 50 feet on each side. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 100 feet on each side. So it's a total of 200 feet, so 100 on each side is a servitude for drainage that the parish has, I guess I would call it perpetual ability to get in there. So, I don't know if did I answer your question? If I didn't,
I
please.
mean, in and around, but I guess my next concern is too about some of the general projects that we have done, about the timeframes and us setting timeframes with the contractors. We're gonna stay on top of that also to put a time frame on when these ditches need to be cleaned by, right?
Are you talking about these here?
Yeah, these particular ones.
absolutely.
Okay, because I know we've done that with general contractors around here, and it seemed that we got on the back burner on some of them.
Well, I wanna, and I say this a lot. When we prepare bid documents, when we prepare bid documents, for example, I know how long T-Bayou took. So I can take, let's suppose it took 8 months and it's 5-6 miles. I can divide 8 by that and say it takes about 1 month per mile. We can do that math.
Okay.
So I'm gonna put in the bid document, it's gonna take 7 months. Larry may say, I want it in 5. All right, no problem. I just recognize, Larry, if you make it 5, your price maybe just went up 30–40%.
Yeah.
That's something we gotta think about. Anytime you know what we can do? We can put in the bid documents that for every day you go over your days, I'm gonna hit you with $5,000 a day of liquidated damage. We can do that. First thing the contractor's gonna do, he's gonna add 30–40% to his bid. That's the reality of it. That's real. I'm about to bid a
No, you don't
Kali
do
Saloon
that.
in Lafayette. I'm gonna tell you right now, the city wants me, what can we do to speed it up? Oh, okay. We can do anything. We can do anything. But just recognize it deals with money. Oh, can we work at night? We can work at night. We can drive piles at night and keep everybody up. I'm just giving an example. So it's gonna be a conversation we're gonna have when it's time to bid. Just know that you can't go out to bid unless he has council approval. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on the, but so the council knows and is gonna know from me what's my projected time frame, not projected, what's gonna be the time frame I'm gonna put in the bid document that contractor has to bid on. And if we wanna hold their toes to the fire, I'm more than willing to ask you how much you wanna make liquidated damages.
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Landry?
Yeah, I'd just like to know, when the surveying process begins, is that when we should, is that when you're gonna really find out when some of these, easements are tread upon? I mean, like, when you do the survey, do you do a land survey, or do you?
No, we don't
also
do,
go out-
no land surveyors. That
Well,
would be a
I mean,
tremendous
not a
task.
land survey, but I'm talking about the layer.
I think what'll happen is, and this is what I recall happening on T-Bayou, I'm gonna engage in conversation with Herman. I'm gonna rely on the parish to help. We certainly, I can tell you what this proposal does not include. It does not include a full courthouse title research of every parcel of land along all these channels. That would be a tremendous dollar value for anybody. I'm gonna rely on Herman and the parish to say, hey, do we have servitudes in place? We're gonna have to work together on that. We did call for a public meeting on T-Bayou. One of the goals that I wanted on that public meeting was that if somebody had a servitude other than 100 feet that they could prove, that's the time to bring it. A lot of these lands are old, they go back way back. They can show us something that there's not a 100-foot servitude, that's only 50, well, I'm gonna have to adapt my plans and make sure we don't trespass, right? So no, it would not include a full boundary or, oh my gosh, you got the money for that, nobody does. It'd be a tremendous task, especially for a parish, there's so many landowners.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and the other thing too is we're gonna need a bigger place than this when we have that public meeting.
Well, what I'm gonna try to do, I think the parish, I think I know we'll deal with the tax assessor's office and the clerk of court to look at voting records to try to get names and addresses. And as a courtesy, I would recommend that we send out a standard letter. Maybe we can do it all at one time for all the channels, even though we're not finished the plans. They call, look, we plan to clean all the channels. Do you have any concerns or enlightening news that you want to tell us? I'm telling you, there's a beaver dam right here. Good, we need to know that. Or the reverse, you don't have no servitude. From what I gather, I believe every major drainage channel has a servitude, and I don't know how that was handled legally. It was probably a blanket statement done way back in time. So we'll rely on some conversation with the parish on that.
Mr. Richard?
Tommy. And the question you just brought up, that's the reason we need, and we're looking to hire a landman right-of-way agent right now. In fact, I think I may have spoken to the chairperson, perhaps maybe Paul and maybe others, and told them that we're very close in doing that because we're spending a lot of money in getting right-of-ways, using engineering companies where we can actually hire on and get a lot more work done at a much less cost. So, just so you know.
Well, the advantage of a landman or a land person would be, if we're about to clean Norris Branch and we know it's coming, that person can pull up their records from the clerk of court, say, okay, there's 15 property owners along, here's their names. That he or she can go walk and start door to door and say, look, this is what's coming. Just so you know, ma'am, we have a servitude in place. Unless you know otherwise, let us know, but this is what we're planning on doing. Technically, a servitude, as I appreciate it, you have right to get on the land, you just can't disturb it such that it has to be left back the way you found it, but you have a perpetual right to get on it. But I think it's common courtesy and good stewardship to let them know, if at all possible. We try to do the best we can.
Right, and
Right?
currently, Public Works is doing that.
Yeah.
And it's taking a lot of times with Public Works to send Herman out there we have so much work to be doing in
Time.
Dexter, we don't have the manpower to do that, so it's a big.
My
I think
cost
it's
would have
big
been a lot
fix.
more if that would be
Exactly.
on our side, and really and truly, that, I mean, you get anybody to go do that, but it's.
Mr.
so-
Shealy?
Dax, I hate to bring up one problem that we need to talk about, but if you knew that we all had 100-foot servitudes, it would make your job a lot easier.
Absolutely.
But not like, any parish that reduces servitudes doubles the problem that you have when it comes time to get ready for making this survey. Because we have, there have been substantial reductions in servitudes, which will create a problem for you and a problem for me.
Sure.
When it comes time to.
Yeah.
I just want somebody other than me to make sure that they understand how reductions in servitudes affect drainage today and into the future.
And again, we all know the correct way would be to go do full title on every property. Can you imagine for every project you consider? You know, for roadway projects, we have to do it, right? I mean, there's no question about it. You talk about drainage, I mean, you know how it looks out there? I mean, you have a mental picture in your mind?
But that's, Dean Watney and I have to spend time.
Absolutely.
You know, with Harvey
And-
trying to do that, and that's the problem it creates, and that's why when somebody says, I want to clean the channel, well, you know, if we knew every channel had 100 feet, we wouldn't have that problem. But when there are reductions and there are changes, then we've got to go look at each individual landowner along that area to make a determination.
Yeah, and I mean, you're the attorney, so there's two ways to look at it. Either we can assume it's 100, host a public meeting, get a record of the voting, if there's a registered voter on that property, put out an official certified letter, and say you have 10 days to let us know if you think you have an easement that's otherwise intended. I'm not sure, I'm just advising, I don't know if that would hold, but I can tell you, I think it would have it would stick a little bit. That'd be about the only way you can do it, because other than that, you'd spend an enormous amount of time doing a full title research as you're. I know, I
Make
understand.
sure that reductions, that you understand what happens when there are reductions in servitude.
I understand.
That's it.
Yeah, if I'm not gonna lie to you, yeah, I'm scared to do a set of plans and all of a sudden we're figuring out after the fact during construction I'm trespassing. You know, if somebody says you're trespassing, you know what my take on it is? Fine, contract, I want you to get off, I want you to jump across their property and keep cleaning. And then send a letter to that property owner. I'm just advising, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just saying, okay, so I just want for the record to know you inhibited this from being cleaning, this channel from being cleaning to serve the public good upstream. I would advise that letter.
All right, Mr. Dugas, you had a question?
Yeah, Dax, is cleaning the same thing as dredging?
No.
Okay, could you explain the difference?
Dredging means, well, I said no fast, and boy, I was always taught at a young, don't react that quick. If I'm dredging is the act of digging. If I'm cleaning up a silt buildup, if my channel is here, from point A to point B, and I obviously got a 5-foot hump of sand or something built up, dredging, excavating, digging, that all would be definitions that would be appropriate. If you're saying dredging to dig deeper or excavating to dig deeper, that's when I reacted no. Because that institutes a different concept. That's a Corps of Engineer thing, and then the Corps gets involved.
So when you talk about surveying, so the bottom of that coulee could be a foot above normal level because of silting, so you're gonna take that foot of material out?
Yes.
And you're gonna do what with it?
Depends. So this is when it institutes a Corps permit. So when you take dredge material or material out and you spread it out, especially if it's over wetlands, well, primarily if it's over wetlands, one of the things we're gonna have to do is walk it to see if there's any known wetlands. Let me back up. If a channel is easily accessible where dump trucks can go back and forth down a headland and get permission to go down the headland, and they can bring in and out that material, no problem. But we don't have that. You know how these channels look. We're gonna have to dig. One of the typical things that's done in channel cleaning is dig what we call little pits along the bank. All right, dig a hole. We dump the cut trees and cut them up, dump it in there, put that material, dump it in there and burn it, and then fill it back up. That'd be the best way I can do it, because, you know, the infamous matter is need to create another straw, you gotta go somewhere.
Okay, well, I'm just.
And it's not to be distributed back and spread out like ashes. You know, it's to be taken out. But at T-Bayou, we had isolated instances where it was only maybe like 50 feet that we needed to just scoop, and you obviously saw from here to here, connect the dots, and that's what I told the contractor.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you for your
you.
presentation. Mr. Reeshorter, you
I'm
can
done.
finish
Thank you. I'm
with
so
parish
sorry.
president announcements.
Sorry it took so long, but I thought you needed to know.
All right, moving on to consent agenda items for public hearing and adoption, summary number 113 and summary number 114. Does anybody have any motion to take either one of those out of consent agenda items? Hearing none, we will vote on the McElhenney Company becoming a National Historic Site and a resolution proclaiming July 2017 as Parks and Recreation Month. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Olivier,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Paul Landry. Discussion? Roll call? That motion carries. Mr. Napier stepped out. Motions introduced for public hearing and, oh, I'm skipping one. Ordinance introduced for public hearing and adoption, there's none. Resolutions introduced for public hearing and adoption, summary number 115, introduced by the parish president. A resolution accepting the audit report for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2016, as prepared by Colder, Champagne, Slavin and Company, and further authorizing the submission of said audit to the Louisiana Legislative Auditor. Note, the rules will need to be suspended to adopt this resolution, which bypassed the joint committee process. So I'd like to entertain a motion to suspend the rules first. Moved by Mr. Brown, second by Mr. Gonsalas. Any discussion on suspending the rules? Roll call. That motion carries, so the rules are suspended so that we can take this motion up tonight without going through committee
I
first.
so move.
I have a motion by Mr. Gonsalas,
Second.
a second by Mr. Brown, on accepting the audit. Any discussion regarding the audit? Hearing none, roll call. That motion carries. Summary number 116, introduced by Natalie Broussard, District 6, a resolution authorizing the chairman to execute all necessary documentation with the Bayou Boys for music services in the amount of $700 for the 2017 Police Jury Association of Louisiana Region 3 meeting being held at Rip Van Winkle Gardens. Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Paul Landry. Second by Mr. Burke Francis. Any discussion? Roll call. That motion carries. Summary number 117, introduced by Ricky J. Gosselin, District 8, a resolution authorizing the expenditure of parish funding for the Iberia Parish Clerk of Court Office for moving expenditures associated with moving files to the new facility on French Street in the amount of $13,000, and further authorizing the return of parish funding to the 2017 general fund budget in the amount of $20,410 and amending said fund.
Move.
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Gonsalas, second by Mr. Goshasan. Any discussion? Let the record reflect Mr. Napier's return. Roll call. That motion carries. Summary number 118, introduced by the Airport Authority, a resolution amending the 2017 Economic Development District Number 1 fund budget in the amount of $75,000 to provide funding assistance for the construction of a vehicle parking lot for the Bristow passengers, all to be funded from blank line item. Note, the funding source will need to be changed. Ordinance number 2016-11-4784, remove the Lewis Street lift station in the amount of $230,000.
Move.
Moved by Mr. Goshasan, second by Mr. Paul Landry. Mr. Goshasan?
If I may, Kim, we removed the funding out of the general fund, out of the budget for the
the EDD district, but we never went back into EDD district and moved the money back in to the undedicated money, correct?
The appropriation, the expenditure appropriation, it goes back into fund balance.
So,
And so that's where that.
so
that
we have to go to
is.
the committee to move the money, but when we release the money, we don't have to go back to committee to release the money in EDD or move it around?
Right, so like we presented the budget, the 230 was in there. When
Correct.
the adoption happened, y'all accepted, y'all adopted the ordinance, and stipulated that the 230 should not be an expenditure appropriation in the
the budget.
2017 budget. And so you remove that 230 and then the way that 230 just goes back into fund balance.
Okay, so,
That 230 was originally pulled from the Lewis Street Road project, Lewis Street Apple project. That's where that
Oh,
230 was
this-
originally pulled from.
right, I know that, but we had to go to EDD district to do that first, and then it went to council, right?
Right.
No, that happened all in budget adoption.
I thought we went to EDD district. Yeah, I thought we went to EDD district and we,
I mean, it may have, like, I don't remember that, but this part of it, the 2016 ordinance is the budget adoption of EDD.
so let me ask you this, if we plan to use EDD money, we gotta go back to EDD again?
Yes.
And move money? That was my point, is reason we thought the money was still appropriated in EDD, just not in the adopted budget. So we were asking if we could still use the line item in EDD that was moved, never moved back to the unrestricted money, and call it in another line item in the adopted in the
When the
amended
budget was presented to the committee, that 230 was in there. So when you adopted, you said take the 230 out of there. So that line item is zero right now. That 230 is not.
In our current adopted budget,
Correct.
but not in EDD when we went to move it.
That is
In
EDD.
Okay, all right, so
budget.
that's what so the money just returns. We don't have to go back and return the money into the line item. In EDD is what you're saying, correct?
It's in fund balance.
Thank you.
Mr. Paulander?
When I thought of the 75,000, I thought this was a pretty good project, guys, but I tell you what, we looked at all the different fund balances. I'm gonna come back and make a motion to just to table us. We just really need to take our time and try to figure out where we're gonna get these funds from. I mean, like the EDD, we got the money to pay the next bond payment, but then the second one coming up, we're starting to cut it kinda close. So I just don't think this is the time to start to be pulling out of there, but it'll give us some time to look at some of our other, projects going on and stuff, so,
I'll second that motion.
So I have a motion to table with a second. Any discussion? Mr. Trombley?
Yeah, I'd just like also to bring out that we've got other projects that have been in the hopper a long time. One of them's 3212. We're gonna have to come up with some funding for that. So we kind of like robbing from Peter to pay Paul on some of these things. And I just think, and I spoke to administration about this today. I think, I'm in agreement with Mr. Landry's second. But spoke to administration, and I feel like what we need to do before we appropriate any money, and I didn't tell Larry this today, but I thought about it also, funding these repairs, which is a different fund, but still, with the audit in consideration and all that. I think we need to prioritize these projects. The ones that have been in the hopper a long time, set those as the number 1, 2, and 3, and start, start with what we got to be the ones that have been there the longest. Get those done, wait till the economy turns around and just be more fiscally responsible as it relates to just like throwing money at projects that sound good, and look good, but that are gonna, number one, they're gonna be done because they've been there so long, and number two, give us a better kind of bang for our buck sort of philosophy.
Mr. Gosselin?
No, he answered my question.
Mr. Dugas?
I understand that the TIF district generate funds to do these type of projects. My question would be, and I don't see Jason here, but maybe Kimberly, does not the airport commission have an unrestricted fund balance, enough money to cover this?
Y'all wanna look at it in your audit reports, or I'll show you where it's at? They're
Yeah.
What page? What page?
It's on page 152. at the very bottom of the page.
152.
So this particular fund is this particular page in the audit report is the balance sheet. They call it a statement of net position, but it's essentially a balance sheet. You know, the familiar term that probably y'all are more familiar with. Way down at the bottom, you can see that category that's labeled net position. So that particular category is all just fund balance, if you will. So $16 million they have invested in capital assets, $16 million worth of improvements and infrastructure there. 26,000 is reserved for debt service payments, and then 603 is their unrestricted fund balance. 603,000.
It's obvious to me that
Ma'am, we're not in public comment. If someone wants to recognize you, they can recognize you, and you can go to the podium.
you've answered my question. Thank you.
Go ahead. I'll recognize.
Mr. Landry's recognized you. If you can go to the podium and give your name.
Megan Gary with the airport. That, the unrestricted, does that have any of our grant monies in there? Or is that just our full fund balance?
That's everything.
Okay.
That's everything. That's your money, that's grant money, that's everything.
Okay. That's what I need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other,
I got a question.
Mr.
Kim,
Barker?
so in your opinion, that the airport could get the 75 out the 603 to build their parking lot? Because I don't know how many grants, I don't know how many grants are in that 603 is what I'm asking.
If they choose.
Well, typically, I mean, and Megan can elaborate on it as well. I mean, a lot of their grants are fully reimbursable. You know, they get like, some of them are split like a 90% through federal, 10% through state. I don't know if there's any that are, I don't know, maybe capital outlay money will be, but that's not in, that hasn't been started yet. So,
Any other questions or comments? So we're voting on the motion to table. Roll call.
Table win.
When? Could we add to that motion that the airport authority come back and report this?
I think it's being tabled until the airport authority has more information and comes back and re-request it.
That wasn't original, that's good with the second?
Is that good with the second?
Fine.
Yes.
Just for clarification, you're gonna just pull it off the shelf, you're not setting a date on it. So
Not
it's-
setting a date on it.
So it's table indefinitely until you pull back from the shelf,
Correct.
laid over.
Kim?
Before y'all vote, just some additional information on the Economic Development District Fund. You know, that the main source of revenue there is that 1% sales tax that's collected. So if y'all all remember, and when we did the budget adoption for the 2017 budgets, we adopted the sales taxes under the premise that we would achieve a 10% decline in sales taxes. And, you know, at the time, we were thinking, oh, that's to be conservative. Actually, for the first 5 months, which we're gonna get, the next check is due, like next week, probably early next week. So at that particular point, we'll have 6 months worth of trend. But for the first 5 months, we're 28% down. So we're already looking at, we adopted with a 10%. So we're looking at an additional 18% at this particular point. So probably within the next 2 to 3 months at the most, we're gonna be looking at it again to make an estimate as to what that actual decline is gonna be and coming towards to the console if we do need an additional adjustment to stay within that variance.
At 5%.
Right. So just so y'all know.
All right. So vote, please. We're voting on the table, Mr. Pollard and
Paul rings out. It was me.
Did I vote?
I voted. What are you looking for?
Joel. Did you vote, Joel?
No, no, you.
We're waiting on you. We're waiting on you. That motion carries. Summary number 119, introduced by the parish president, a resolution amending the 2017 Rabies Control and Health Unit Fund budgets in the amount of $98,450 to appropriate funding for priority repairs to the Parish Animal Shelter as recommended by the parish's facility consultant, all to be funded from the fund balance previous year's line item. Do you have a motion?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Olivier.
Second.
Second by Mr. Napier. Any discussion? Mr. Landry?
Again, this building, where are we with this thing as it relates to how bad is this thing? And how,
It's-
you know,
I don't know if any of you ever visit that building,
well, I have.
but it's.
I mean, I know we can't shut it down.
We can't shut it down, and it's not in the best shape. And Mr. Gesser actually had a lot more that he recommended that we would do at that particular building. I don't recommend we do it right now. We don't have the funds, as far as I'm concerned, to do all of the things that he's asking us to do. So that's why the number that you're actually seeing is reduced. But we need substantial help at that building to keep it in operation.
Mr. Napier?
Mr. Richard, if we approve this money right here, this goes out for bid?
Yes.
This is gonna go out for bid, for 3 bids?
Quotes, RFPs. You might want to get up, Mike, and answer where they can hear you. Or come up front.
If you can just explain the procedure, Mike, if we allocate that money.
So, should y'all fund it tonight, the next step would be Mr. Gesser would prepare some set of plans and specs, sort of similar to what Dax referred to earlier, and we would go out, and because of the value of the cost estimate, it would be quotes. We would be receiving quotes, not formal sealed bids, but in
Right.
essence, the competitive
Right,
process would be
Right.
conducted.
That would just, you're not gonna just
No.
get somebody and
Oh,
say,
no,
come
no,
in,
no.
you're gonna get quotes, and it might be less.
Exactly.
Right. Thank you. All right, I'm good.
Any other discussion? Mr. Landry?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a substitute motion to go ahead with it, but also take out the 5,000 in professional fees and the 10% on the contingency fees, which would drop it down to about 84.5.
So you're,
And let Mr. Gesser monitor it, and let Mr. Gesser.
Right.
Okay.
Second.
it's, I have a motion to amend the resolution from the 98,450 to 84,5, and I have a second by Mr. Dugas. Discussion,
Just
Mr.
a
Napier?
question, I see where the 5,000 for the professional fees, what was the other one, Bob?
10%.
Contingency.
Contingency fees,
How much was that?
10%.
10%.
Where you see that? That's-
Well, if you look on Mr. Gesser's estimate, he estimated the total cost would be $89,500. If you take out the professional fees of 5,000, that's the 84,500.
Correct.
What's on the agenda is being requested is 98,450, so that reflects,
Oh, the agenda had more.
correct.
Oh, I got you, okay.
Any further
No, he should have just reduced it.
comments, questions, discussion? Roll call. That motion carries. Summary number 120, introduced by the parish president, a resolution amending the 2017 Public Building Maintenance Fund budget in the amount of $27,630 to appropriate additional funding for priority repairs to the New Iberia Veterans Memorial Building in City Park as recommended by the parish's facility consultant, all to be funded from fund balance previous year's line item. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Olivier, seconded by Mr. Paul Landry. Any discussion?
I got a
Mr. Gosselin?
Larry, because I see, and if I'm not germane, please correct me, Mr. Chairman. on the buildings, I see, we voted on 2 public buildings back to back. Are we gonna expect administration anytime soon, some of the buildings that maybe we ought to consider, like you suggested, closing in the near future? Because I see we add enough money to every building, and I see your comments, and I respect them, but I would like to see, some feedback relatively soon.
We have a couple of buildings right now where we're looking at potentially closing. One of them, I'd rather not say.
No, I don't want no
Yes,
buildings, but I just don't
answer-
want to get in a position where we keep authorizing funding to buildings that where we know we're gonna close down the future. I don't know what your anticipations
Right.
are, and I'm
We're
not
not
saying this is
planning on
one of
closing
them.
these two
Okay,
right now.
that's fine, yeah, I'm good.
Mr. Tommy Landry?
Yeah, the issues I have with the veterans in the park is that there's this is a Band-Aid approach to that building.
It is.
And
It is.
there's a lot of issues over there.
I was getting ready to tell you that.
And one of them's handicap accessibility. And my thought process is that, again, throwing good money at bad and opening ourselves up to liability as it relates to that, because it's not handicap accessible. And, I don't know if y'all have addressed that or not, but again, I just, and I'm kind of like thinking like Ricky is, not necessarily looking at buildings that we're going to close, but looking at buildings that are out there that we're paying insurance on, that we're not, occupying or are being used for like.
Okay, I'm gonna defer that to Mike.
Okay. Go ahead.
So Mr. Gesser's comprehensive assessment, his original total was $369,200.
For veterans?
For veterans.
Oh,
But we're not done yet.
Well,
Let him
yes,
keep
that
on
gets
going.
27.
Let him keep on going.
So when that number was presented to administration, we requested that he reevaluate his assessment and come back with what he would prioritize as a phase 1 approach. And that's where got us to this, where we're at today. But there is a pretty significant balance of repairs that remain.
Okay, and take that amount and look at what we get on rentals, what it costs us for insurance. We have people living there. I just think, we got to start somewhere. And, is it tonight? I don't know. But I'm telling you, this thing's way, way out of control as it relates to what our revenue is.
And the plan, just so you know, is in capital outlay come November, we putting in capital outlay to, and I wanted to talk to the council about this before we do it, but I guess I'll do it now. Is actually build a building in Iberia Parish that can meet the needs of what we have for several buildings. And after we build that particular building, we can close some of these buildings down. But for example, I know Ricky, you've had concern, and Tommy, you've had concern about the Sugarcane Festival building, being one of them. This past weekend, they had a very nice event there. That's the only building in the parish that have a stage. So we have to, we need to make the decisions to shut some of these buildings down. But before you can shut them down, you have to have something to be able to hold the events that we currently holding. The Veterans Building, if we had a nice building, because that's one of the best we have in the parish for people doing weddings and things of that nature, we could perhaps shut that building down. We could perhaps shut the Sugarcane Festival building down if we had a place that you can go and do shows and recitals. But we have to do something, we have to build something before we shut them down, in my personal opinion. Or are we going to continue?
Have you been in discussion with capital, with our local legislation as it relates, legislators as it relates?
Yes, as far as capital outlay, yes. Well, to answer that question, yes.
It's not good,
Well, nothing is good right now.
Well, that's the point.
Mr. Goshenstown?
Well, Mike, I have a question for you. Well, I guess Kim, how much do we have in the budget right now for the Veterans Memorial Building?
75,000.
So we're gonna add that 75,000 plus the 27, right? Let me ask you something, Mike. Some of these bids were put in 300,000. Could we bid out those services and then reduce the scope once it came in, like we did the clerk of courts building and the courthouse building with the canopy? Why are we bringing them all in under the bid law of 150,000? Why don't we just send them out there, and when it comes back, we'll look at the scopes of what we need as far as the money we're bringing in. Because I know we're cutting some of these scopes down, but we just raised the millage for this particular reason. So I don't want to get an influx of money in the account when we've raised millages in the public building and maintenance for upcoming buildings. Remember that? So is there any way that we can go back and have a bid put out for that? And
Well, in order to do that, y'all would have to budget the full amount. Y'all would have to
okay,
approve the full.
and I'm understanding to that, but I mean, you already know that you already cut some of that down, so that expectation will still be there. Maybe it'll come in more or less than what you thought, and then you can still reduce the scope, but now you'll actually have concrete numbers.
You can't go out to quote one unless you have the money allocated for it.
I understand that, sir, and I just said that. We would put the money there, what you thought, Mr. Gesser thought it would be, send them out for bid. When the bids come back, they could be extremely lower than what we thought.
I see what he's saying, yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to do.
I mean, that's what I mean, that's part of the, we've done that, that's not, we're not reinventing the wheel, I mean, we've done that before.
Mr. Shealy, you want to respond to Mr. Gosherson?
You do this on multiple buildings. After you do it about twice, you're gonna have real trouble with contractors who are willing to bid on your project on that day. Because they're gonna.
You're right.
Well, I understand that. I mean, my thing is, you know, everyone's looking for work right now. It's not like the economy's been the best. So, I mean, people are gonna want to compete. I'm just saying, I mean, you know, I don't wanna have to do, we give 27,000 tonight and then we're back 6 months later with another issue in the building, with the structure of the building that we could have, you know, we could have prevented. But I'm good. Thanks.
Mr. Brown?
That's okay. What I wanted to bring out that it wasn't just 27,000.
No, that's right.
This project is more.
Yeah, the
Well,
total is
100.
93.
Three's 100.
Total. No, I'm talking about what you planning on building, using right now. It's not just this, it's plus minus
75.
Plus 75, because 75 you have in it.
Okay. That's all.
Mr. Napier?
Well, one thing I want to say, Mr. Shealy, you are absolutely correct. As a contractor, Warren, if you do, you could get away with it this time, probably. But the one thing that I hate as a contractor is just running some numbers for you, knowing that you're not gonna use it. You know, because you using time in these general contractors' offices to bid this. And you're right, if you keep doing that, you're not gonna have nobody that's gonna wanna, you know, put out a bid and do work for the parish government. So what we put out is what we should be considered doing. You know, and if the bids come over budget, well,
Then you can't do it.
But to just use, hey, that's what Mr. Guess is for. He can put you a budget number on this stuff without going to general contracts out for official bid. You know, I mean, I'm not speaking for you, but
You're correct.
Gesser would know if we want.
It's an estimate, he's gonna be around, it
Right,
should be around.
right. I mean,
that
it won't be
number.
to the T, but if,
Right.
I mean, he came up with 300, and to me, that just, I mean, for that little building to have $300,000 worth of repairs, I mean, to me, I'm like, Tommy, no,
Even 100.
the original was 300. That little building to have that many repairs, to me, the first thing I'm thinking of is,
Tear it
let's
down.
bulldoze that thing and build another one. You know,
Wait till you get it.
no, but I'm saying,
No, but I
for
see
that
what-
little building to have that much, you know how much
Yeah.
money you could start with a new building with $300,000?
Get the sugar cane pressed.
I had no idea. That's the first time I hear 300,000.
I think what's happening is that they didn't do the proper maintenance on the building to keep the building up, personally speaking. If they would have did the right maintenance on all of these buildings, we wouldn't be in the problem where we are right now. The building is no different than a bridge. The reason I personally feel that we had the problems with the bridges a couple of years ago is because years before that, they quit doing maintenance on the bridges. I don't know if y'all know this, but when I first became a parish councilman, we had the same type of person in place like Gerald, like we have right now with a facilities consultant. And we never experienced those numbers being so high, because when they would do the maintenance, when they would inspect it, your numbers wasn't so high. Same thing with with Herman's Bridges. You know, every year you have an engineer that used to go out and inspect the bridges. You might have one pollen that's going bad, you change it. But if you wait until you have five, it's a big difference. Maintenance, it's just like your car. Preventative maintenance, do the same thing on your properties.
Okay.
Mr. Goshenson?
One positive point, we do have a plan, and that's what we need in this particular deal. But, you know, you said earlier about building a multi-usage facility.
Yes.
I'm sure that's what y'all, you know, we're looking at. And, you know, talking about it, we're looking at roughly 200,000 right there that could be potential
So
going
what
to a
do we
new
do?
building,
Right,
you know?
right.
So
What
I understand. I mean, I'm appreciative to know that this council and parish president has a plan, and the
We do
people
have a
will-
plan, believe me.
Thank you.
And I want to make you understand, this thing don't move as fast as I want it to move. There are a lot of mistakes I've made when talking to the parish council saying I can actually get something done in 3 months. Well, I really could have if it was my business. But this government is a lot different. So just like the new parish councilmen are still learning their responsibilities or some of the things, believe me, as parish president, I am definitely still learning a lot.
Mr. Paul Landry?
So we see that the project's 93, and we got 75 in the budget already. I'm going to make a substitute motion that we take out the 5,000 on professional fees, take out the 10% contingency, and take out the 15,000 for landscaping. So that might get us right back to the 75 that we already got in the budget.
So basically, your motion is to delete this item on the agenda? And just leave the 75,000 that's there, and
Yeah.
they can do what they have with the 75?
I would say that's fair, yeah.
So I have a motion.
I'll second that.
I have a motion to delete summary number 120 and a second by Mr. Gosselin. Mr. Brown?
Is he saying, just to take that amount out, or he specifying what to take out?
He specified what to take out, and I agree with it.
Basically, we're just gonna delete this item altogether. There's
Right.
$75,000 in the budget already to do the repairs.
do the repair.
And they can do what they can with the 75,000.
With the 75,000.
We can vote no.
We're voting to delete this item off the agenda. That's the motion that's on
So hold
the,
on. Let me ask you a question, Paul. So what you're saying is that when they go out for bids, and the bids come back in at 65, whatever, and we have the 75, we could still, if there was something else like the landscaping, you do it, then not a problem.
That's what I'm saying.
All right.
All right, okay.
all right, so I have a motion with a second to delete. Any more discussion on the motion to delete? Roll call. Nope, sorry, Mr. Mike.
I was gonna just point out one thing, the $15,000, I just wanna let y'all know, it wasn't just plants. It included some, an estimate to address some drainage issues that would potentially cause issues to the building as well. But, I mean, removing it, we could, if the bids come in lower, we could address it.
Okay, all right.
That motion has
Is it to
carried.
the building or to the canal or to the pond?
For the building.
For the building?
The building, around the building.
All right, summary number 121, introduced by the parish president, a resolution amending the 2017 parish-wide drainage fund budget in the amount of blank for engineering and related services for the proposed drainage activities for the following systems: A, Park Purdue, Bayou Park Purdue and Norris Canal, Branch Canal, the Blanc Coulee and Petitons Canal, Delahousie Canal, all to be funded from fund balance previous year line items.
Move.
I have a motion by Mr. Trahan,
Second.
a second by Mr. Mathurin. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Mr. Dugas.
Yeah, that amount that's blank here was the amount that Dak
Yes.
That's what
Yes,
Dak
sir.
said, 274?
204.
204.
204.
I'm trying to give Dak some more.
Thank you.
Okay,
Please include that in
He'll
my
take it.
motion of the 204.
All right, so Mr. Trahan is modifying his motion to reflect it's 204, and that would be for engineering through Finstamaker. Is that part of your
Yes.
motion?
All right, with a second. Yes, sir.
All right, any other discussions regarding the motion? And it would be amended to say $204,000 for engineering through Fenster-Maker.
Okay.
Hearing none, roll call. That motion carries. Summary number 122, introduced by the parish president, a resolution amending the 2017 Airport Authority fund budget in the amount of $328,482 to accept state grant funding for apron rehabilitation and apron rehabilitation Phase 2 at Acadiana Regional Airport, all to be funded with grant proceeds. Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Brown, second by Mr. Napier. Any discussion? Roll call. Motion carries. Summary number 123, introduced by the parish president, a resolution amending the 2017 Economic Development District Number 1 fund budget in the amount of $74,750 to provide carryover funding for the Universal Parkway project, all to be funded from the fund balance previous year line items. Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr.
Second.
Landry, second by Mr. Trahan. Any discussion? Roll call. Motion carries. Summary number 124, introduced by the parish president, a resolution authorizing the parish president to sign and submit all necessary documentation for the FY 2018-2019 Louisiana Community Development Block Grant Program for a sewage rehabilitation project in association with Iberia Parish Sewage District Number 1. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Landry, second by Mr. Trahan. Any discussion? Roll call. That motion carries. Summary number 125, introduced by Ricky J. Gosselin, District 8, a resolution amending resolution number 2011-61, adopted March 9, 2011, which approved a list of Iberia Parish drainage canals to be sprayed, ditches and channels as listed, in order to remove that portion of Mullins Road beginning at the end of Bel Air subdivision to Joe Schwing subdivision from the spray list, and further to put that portion of Mullins Road on the grass cutting list. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Gosselin,
Dis-
second by
discuss-
Mr. Brown. Mr. Gosselin?
Question, Mr. Richard, I actually, and coincidentally, I had a couple calls today, want to know if we get this added, if they can get that cut relatively in the next couple weeks when we can get a chance. They called
Daguerre
today.
Public Works Director right in the back.
I'm just so you heard it.
The answer is
Thank
no.
you.
He said no.
Any other
Honestly, I
discussion?
had two calls today, ask me.
We just need an answer.
Roll call.
Ricky, I had 3.
You see.
Let it not be said that Public Works is short thing.
That motion carries. Moving on to the expansion.
Expansion. I didn't even look at it.
Discuss and consider a motion to expand the agenda to discuss and consider the following items. Resolution summary number 126, which is a resolution amending the 2017 royalty fund budget and the amount of blank to provide for an operating transfer to the 2017 Acadiana Fairgrounds Commission fund budget to be utilized for the payment of expenditures for the fairgrounds, all to be funded from blank. Note the funding, amount of funding and source to be determined during discussion of the item. Summary number 127, which is a resolution rescinding resolution number 2017-66, adopted May 10, 2017, which resolution ordered and called a special election on October 14, 2017, for 2 proposed amendments to the Iberia Parish Home Rule Charter in order to consider these amendments at a future election. Natalie Broussard, District 6. C, Resolution Summary Number 128, which is a resolution amending the 2017 general fund budget in the amount of $42,800 to accept funding for the improvements to the voting system, audio recording equipment, and related equipment in the council chambers, all to be funded through the Louisiana Governmental Assistance Program. That's from the clerk of the council. I need a motion to go into public hearing regarding the expansions.
Move.
Moved by Mr. Olivier,
Move.
second by Mr. Trahan.
This is
any discussion on, no, it's a public hearing. Roll call?
I can tell her it's me. Vote to expand.
That motion carries. Is there anybody in the public who wants to discuss any items on the agenda, the expansion agenda? Thought we had a taker, but apparently not. We can close public comments.
Move.
Moved by Mr. Gonsalas.
Second.
Second by Mr. Michael Landry. Roll call. Now I need a motion to expand the agenda for, I can do it, I can expand for all three, or I have to expand individually. Do I have to expand individually? No, I can expand for all three. Need a motion to,
The reason I'm putting those separate items because in case someone didn't want to expand for one item.
Wait,
That's why I did it separately.
might be rolling up.
I'm gonna try
We've
it.
had that problem.
I'm gonna try it. Then if it doesn't work, we'll go back. All right, so I need a motion to expand the agenda for items A, B, and C.
Move.
Moved by Mr. Landry,
Second.
second by Mr. Olivier. Roll call. That motion carries. So we'll go to summary item 126, which is the resolution to amend the royalty fund budget to transfer to the Acadiana Fairgrounds Commission. If y'all need me to read the whole thing again, I will, but do I have a motion?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Paul Landry. Second by Mr. Tommy Landry.
What's the dollar amount?
Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Landry?
First of all, item number 126 is actually from me. It's not the parish president. So if we could note that duly.
From the finance chairman.
Right, that's fine.
What's your name?
Mr. Landry?
Okay.
Columbo.
Ricky. Also name. I think the amount that we're going to be looking to move is about 12,000. Kimberly? Okay. And what we're looking here, guys, is this, in late July, early August, the Acadiana Fairgrounds is going to be getting their last check from the Visitors Enterprise for 12,000, and we're holding a few bills. So what we'd like to do is take some money for royalty, and then when the money comes in July or August, we'll repay it back. So it's just a short-term loan.
Mr. Tommy Landry?
How much is there in royalty?
12.5.
Under reserve, we have probably, I think after the last adjustment that we just did at the, I can't remember if it was the last meeting, but the bridge load stuff should be approximately like nominally
Say that real low.
$900.
No, say that real low, maybe $900. Don't say $900.
Yeah.
We don't want to spend.
So,
I mean, keep in mind, the level of uncertainty, we've only, and I've said this, a couple of meetings back, we've only received one quarterly check from royalty. So we still operate in an environment, I mean, gas prices continue to go down, so it's.
And we're operating on day to day, so we're doing well, but we keep up with the finances daily.
Any other comments or
It's a
questions?
loan, it's a loan.
Okay.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I would like to, I see a lot of questions still in people's faces. Part of the problem that the Acadiana Fairgrounds is experiencing right now is they just did the workers' comp audit for the March 2015 to March 2016, and they ended up owing after the audit approximately $14,000 in workers' comp insurance that was not budgeted by the Acadiana Fairgrounds Commission for the year 2017. So that is contributing to their problems right now, in addition to them not getting their enterprise funds that they expected to all receive by June. They just got some on Monday or Tuesday. I think it came on Tuesday. And they were told that they would get the rest for the 2015-2016 grant by the end of July. So the $12,000 is, if they wouldn't have had the unexpected budgeted expense and gotten the grant, they would be okay. But those two factors, and we knew that. I mean, you look at the audit report, they're operating at $170,000 operating loss. It's a report that we get every year. So we knew that they were going to be in this position. And so for them to be this close to making it with only needing an advance of their grant, I don't think they're doing as bad as they could be. Mr. Gosselin?
Yeah, I understand we owe the money, and it's obvious we owe the money, but I mean, the message that we sending across tonight, we just voted not to fund a parking lot for a company at the airbase, that's economic development. We just heard from the auditors that they didn't pay all the sales tax, and now we got to fork up $12,000 because the workman's comp part. So I mean, it's obviously there's a trend line here that we need to pay attention to. It's being very cautious, overly cautious. I understand that a vote no, we can't because we owe the money, but in reality, y'all talk about prioritizing funding. We better think about prioritizing funding in another direction, and quickly.
Just to give you some assurance, Mr. Gosselin, there has been lots of headway with
Yes.
communications and working with the Acadiana Fairgrounds Commission. Our finance chair has been really on top of it this year and working with them and bridging a line of communication with administration. They are meeting regularly and trying to work through it. At the meeting that we had this week with the Fairground Commission, they have agreed to go back and I know they're on a bare bones budget already, but
Sure.
they're going back even more, and they're cutting hours, and they are cooperating and working with the administration and with the council, and we're
It's
all
encouraging to
working-
hear.
We're all working very closely together.
That's okay.
So,
So we can get it done. Let's go.
any other questions, comments? Kim?
Right here, we're mentioning only to amend the royalty fund. We actually need to amend both sides. So if we could change or amend the wording to also include the Acadiana Fairgrounds Commission fund.
That's okay with the
Yes.
mover in the second? Tommy?
Tom?
Yeah. How much is the sales tax issue? Does anybody have a number on the sales tax that they owe?
Not yet. Between tomorrow and Friday, I'm gonna get in touch with, the firm that was working out there and ask them to start helping us to put together those numbers.
That's part of what we discussed with the auditors to
I
actually.
mean, like, you don't have a ballpark?
No. It was before your time, before my time.
Before all of our time. Mr. Brown?
Now, you see this is a loan?
Yes.
Okay. I guess it's gonna be, okay. That's good. Just, I'm good as it goes.
That's right.
Roll call?
Oh, I hate to do this.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Motion carries. All right, resolution summary number 127 is the resolution to amend the special election. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Landry, second by Mr. Gosselin. Any discussion?
Miss,
Mr. Landry?
what was the total amount spent on that?
There was not a total amount spent yet, but the information that we got from the Secretary of State was that if we have this election on October 14th, it's going to cost the parish approximately $22,000 to have this parish-wide election. And so we felt it was more prudent to do it when there was another parish election, which we heard from the levy board that they're going to be requesting a parish-wide election in November. Not saying there will be one in November, so, but my request is that we not have it on October 14th, and we move it to a future election when we know that there actually will be a parish-wide election, to save us some money.
I'll make that motion.
Yeah, I second.
Remember what, Mr. Brown?
Any other discussion? Roll call. That motion carries. The last item on the expansion agenda is the resolution summary number 128, which is to accept the grant money for the improvements to the audio equipment and the voting system. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Olivier. Second by Mr. Trahan. Any discussion? Roll call. That motion carries.
Motion adjourned.
Have a motion to adjourn with a second. We are adjourned.